Hello, BookTube. I've got a little mail for you today on a very beautiful Monday. It is boiling hot. We are going to reach a record today for how hot it is on this date in Boston, a record for all time that records have been kept, which is why I've got a drooping bean in the background. She is not only a little bit dispirited by the heat, but also by her own spirits, which want her to go out and about. And the sidewalks are hot. The walk will be wearing, so I will need to be careful about that. But I can't help but look at it a little melancholy. First of all, it is the temperature today is going to be a full 30 degrees cooler than I would like it to be. Fully 30 degrees, not 3 or 13, 30 degrees cooler. And another element of the melancholy is that the weather is going to take a sharp turn in a couple of days. And so for all I know, this could be the last day that is warm for a long time. So, but I have some mail and a couple of boxes that I thought we'd be daring and open the boxes together instead of me opening to be wary of insanity, of 21st century insanity that I'm just encountering on the fly and might rant about. I encountered a tiny bit of that in the new TLS, which I guess I'm going to have to get used to it looking like this. It doesn't come folded anymore. It's just this magazine-y type thing. I guess I'm just going to have to get used to that. This cover, I'm assuming, is misprinted because you can barely read the TLS, the letters themselves. But the thing that struck me this time around, there's a lot of stuff in here that I want to read. I haven't read the whole thing yet, but the thing that struck me was the letters column. One letter in particular that I'm going to read you, even though it's trouble to read it. It could get everybody into trouble. I'm going to read it anyway. It comes from Leeds. It comes from Leeds, which I know quite well. Anna Macon. Anna Macon's review of The Sexual Evolution by Nathan Lentz and Sex is a Spectrum by Augustin Fuentes repeats several claims about biological sex that are at odds with established evolutionary biology. The origin of the sexes is relatively well understood, thanks to established research into the concept of anisogamy. Disruptive selection favored two and only two gamete structures. Large immobile gametes, otherwise known as eggs, and small motile gametes, otherwise known as sperm. Almost all sexual reproduction in the animal kingdom is structured around this binary division. Macon points to two questions that she claims challenge understanding of this, that of clownfish and the differences of sexual developments, otherwise known as DSDs. Sequential hermaphroditism, which is what we observe in clownfish, represents an interesting reproductive strategy, but it does not constitute a third sex or a spectrum of sexes. The clownfish functions at different times as male and female. Even species that have evolved simultaneous hermaphrodism, think of mollusks, are simply both male and female at the same time. In both cases, there are only two sexes, a binary. The existence of individuals with DSDs does not provide evidence of a spectrum of sexes. I've been saying this for a long time. It is absolutely useless to say, but you do not define something by exceptions. But nevertheless, this person is going to try and say it too. A person with ovaries, regardless of external appearance, is biologically female. We use external development as an indicator of the likely sex of an individual, not as the definer of the sexes. This is why we can tell whether an organism is male or female across spectrum with a plethora of evolved body types. If a human being developed biologically to produce both small and large gametes, such a human would be hermaphroditic, as in the clownfish or the mollusk. But we are still left with two sexes, a binary. When biologists state that sex is binary, they mean precisely this. There are two and only two sexes, which are classified by gamete type. This is the definition found consistently in the primary literature and is repeatedly affirmed by eminent biologists such as Professor Richard Dawkins. To conflate binary sex with overlapping traits such as height or body mass is to confuse distinct categories with quantitative variations within them. The reviewer's closing suggestion that the books under review present the facts is questionable. Where claims directly contradict long-established findings in evolutionary biology, they are not facts, but contentious interpretations. While this may be a socially and politically complicated issue with strong feelings on both sides, biologically it is a simple binary, male and female. And I winced when I read that letter. I believe, I don't know how devious the letters page people are at the TLS. They could be quite devious. They could want a nice dust up in their letters column. If they want one, they're bound to get one with this. I can suspect them of being devious by printing this letter as opposed to what I'm sure were a dozen letters they got about those reviews. I could suspect them of being devious on two fronts. One, the writer from Leeds repeatedly refers to established biological knowledge when appeals to authority are worthless. What the writer from Leeds should have said is not these claims fly in the face of established biological knowledge, but that they fly in the face of observable physiological facts. It's not that a bunch of gray, bearded old men think this and so it has to be true. It's that the facts are this way. That's suspicion number one of the TLS being sneaky. And suspicion number two, of course, is that reference to Richard Dawkins as a renowned biologist. Richard Dawkins is not a biologist. He hasn't been a biologist in, 150 years? He's a public speaker. He's a public figure. He is... Not only is he a public figure who hasn't done clinical work in a biological lab in the lifetime of anyone reading that letter, but also he is infamously now, an incredibly controversial public figure who has made all sorts of intemperate, short-tempered, and caustic pronouncements on social media, not in a lab, not in peer-reviewed literature, but on social media about trans people. Now, it doesn't matter whether you think that those pronouncements of his were basically right or basically wrong. Invoking him as an example of your authority in the subject is, when people write in about this letter, they are going to zing it for that point. They are going to zing it for both those points. That science is not an accumulation of accepted authority, and that Richard Dawkins is not a biological authority. He's a public speaker. He's an author of books. He's a popularizer. He hasn't done peer-reviewed work in 50 years. So, I could suspect that the folks behind the letters page of the TLS are intentionally putting forward this thing in order to gin up controversy, because those are two huge weaknesses in what is otherwise an indisputable case. I have had intelligent people in the 21st century tell me, oh, there's no such thing as biological sex. I mean, there is such a thing as biological sex, but who knows how many variations there are. It's a spectrum. It's not a binary. And if you say, no, no, it's just a matter of gametes, that's all, then people think you're saying that's all people are, is gametes. And that if it's just a matter of gametes, then you must be a bigot. Then you must hate trans people. When the original apple in the Garden of Eden here that has driven so many people to the alt-right, not just on this subject, but in terms of whether or not they think dictatorship is okay. The original apple in the Garden of Eden that has driven so many otherwise previously normal people into the arms of the alt-right, made them absolute frothing lunatics who hate everyone, who are filled with rage and hatred, is this. It's this very thing. This is the apple in the Garden of Eden, telling people this obvious, observable, physical reality is not actually real. And if you don't agree with me, if you don't parrot that back to me, I'll get you debanked, I'll get you fired from your job, I'll get your tenure revoked, I'll have your awards at universities revoked, I'll have your honorary degrees revoked, I'll make sure that bomb threats are called in to anywhere that wants to pay you for a speaking gig. And since I don't want to pile on the letter writer from Leeds, because I am 100% certain that they have already lost their job because of this letter. But nevertheless, I'll be very curious to see if letters actually come in. We will see. I was furious 10 years ago when I saw the way the winds were blowing. I was furious with the people who were saying, well, I say that green is orange, and if you don't agree with me, it's not just that we're disagreeing, and it's not just that I need to educate you because so-and-so is so tired. All I do all day, I get up in the morning and all I do is educate people because I know everything. I know more than trained physiologists and biologists in their laboratories. I can walk into the laboratory with a ring in my nose and no knowledge in my head at all of anything, and tell them, no, it's a spectrum. It always has been. Didn't you notice? When that started to happen, and when those mobs started to wield real power to get people kicked out of their homes, to get their jobs revoked, I cautioned. Caution might be too calm a word. I was angry because I said, if you push this too far, the backlash will be enormous and it will affect us all. QED, I believe. But anyway, that is the TLS. I am not going to write a response to that letter. There's another thing in this issue that I'm going to write a letter about, but not that. There'd be no point at all. But I'll be interested to see. I will keep you updated, I guess, in 2 weeks when the next TLS gets here. The next TLS that looks like a magazine in the doctor's office. But anyway, then we have the boxes, which are bound to be less contentious, right, than that subject. Let's see here. I mean, when the writer from Leeds cites Richard Dawkins as an eminent biologist, when there are other eminent biologists who might be willing to go on record and say this is just a matter of gametes, if you try to say that this is a spectrum in the laboratory, none of your work will be valid. So this is not arguable. Since the writer did not try to get a legitimate biologist to say that, you get the strong impression that the writer from Leeds is getting their information from. Anyway, let's just drop the subject and see here. All right, what are you, my darling? What are you? Okay, did I request this? This is by Guillermo Stitch, and it's called The Coast of Everything. Fat thing like this. Doesn't say a novel, and fiction always nowadays does. Okay, this is from a very small press, and Guillermo Stitch is, of course, a pseudonym. What on earth is this? It looks very postmodern. Well, let's read the back. I don't have a sheet for it. There is no description on the back. Okay, don't do this. Smaller presses, don't do this. If all you put on the back are blurbs, then what are you telling a prospective buyer who picks this thing up because it's well designed and a nice cover, and they flip it over? What are you telling them? Well, you never mind what it's about. You should buy this because other people are buying it. Well, okay, I don't want to read. I don't want to read what other people say. Do you describe this at all? You don't. Okay, all right. Sagging Meniscus Press does not describe this at all. Not at all. And there's no price on it. Okay, so The Coast of Everything by someone writing under the pen name of Guillermo Stitch. I have no idea what it is. I have no idea what to tell you about it. And for anybody watching who's thinking about small or indie press or independently publishing their books, take note of all the things this thing is doing right. That's a very eye-catching cover. And take note of all the things it's doing wrong. It doesn't tell you what it costs. It doesn't tell you what it is. It doesn't tell you what it's about. It doesn't tell you anything about the author or anything else. It's just here. Buy it. If in the 21st century, where a bag of potato chips costs $8.50, if you look at this and say, well, actually my answer is no, then. If you're not going to try to tell me what this is, then I'm not going to buy it. Blind. Well, I think you'll have a lot of company if that's your answer. So, The Coast of Everything. Someone writing under the name of Guillermo Stitch. No idea what it is. Couldn't tell you. I know what some other people have said it is, but the only person's opinion you should take in such circumstance is mine. So we'll move on. That's weird. A weird non-entry in the mail. We'll just move on. Wish that it weren't so, but we have some tribute. Very nice. We have some tribute. Okay, so we have Virginia Spencer Carr. This is her big fat biography of John Dos Passos. Nice big thing that I have not read this thing in so long. When did this come out? 1984. I probably read this in the late 80s. This author's really good, and I love this biographer is really good, and I love this author. Great, fantastic. Okay, fantastic. I never see that. Never see it. Wonderful. Okay. Isn't this lovely? This is John Keegan. This is an anthology of his called The Book of War. It's an anthology of first-hand battle reporting over the ages of mankind. John Keegan, of course, being a very famous 20th century military historian who later on in his career, he kept writing, in my opinion, a little longer than he should have, and became a little complacent, either a little complacent or a little stubborn when it came to taking the help of graduate students and paid assistants. Because he's a little hit or miss the further along in his career you go. And that's a shame, because he's great. And with this, I read this. This came out in when? The early 2000s? 1999. And I ignored it when it first came out, because I wasn't in the reviewing game in 1999. And then when it came out in paperback, I think Penguin brought it out as a trade paperback, and I read that and liked it very much. I'd already by that point developed a wariness when it comes to John Keegan. His book on the American Civil War is not very good. His book on the Iraq War is even worse. But some of his earlier books are as brilliant as military history gets. So it's a little bit of a gamble that you run. And I read this thing in trade paper. I liked it very much, and I assumed, maybe a little cynically, that the reason that this was put together so solidly is because A, 99% of the writing in here is not Keegan, and B, the selection work, the excerpts, the hunting down of permissions and reprints and whatnot, that could all have been done by other people. I would think that could be done by other people. So you get him, I think he writes the introduction to this thing, if I remember correctly. Yeah, he writes the introduction. Then we get Thucydides, Xenophon, Caesar, Josephus, Andrew Wheatcroft. He's stuck in right there with the ancients. William Dunbar, Robert Southey, Davy Crockett, a whole bunch of others. I mean, you get Kipling and Thomas Hardy. So this is a great anthology to have, and that trade paperback, I have no idea what ever happened to it. Probably it fell apart or was torn apart by dogs. But this is a nice hardcover with a library covering on it. That's fantastic. This tribute hits the mark. And then what's this last one? Oh, good. This is Frederick Taylor. It's so good. This is Frederick Taylor's book, The Berlin Wall. All about... look at that cover design. All about the wall, and look at that. Oh, man, what great end papers. A lot of you will be too young to remember the Berlin Wall. On the morning of August 13th, 1961, the residents of East Berlin found themselves cut off from family, friends, and jobs in the West by a tangle of barbed wire that ruthlessly cut the city of 4 million in two. Within days, the barbed wire entanglement would undergo an extraordinary metamorphosis. It became an imposing 103-mile-long wall guarded by 300 watchtowers, a physical manifestation of the struggle between Soviet communism and American capitalism. And it features in a million spy novels. It features in a million memoirs of the time, both it going up and its daily existence, and then famously it's coming down. And this book covers it all. Just great. So glad to have this. Fantastic. So there you go. That is the mail. And we did not hit... Well, we hit a landmine right away. It's because I talked about sex versus gender. But I didn't do it. I was reading someone else's letter. That's the fig leaf here that I'm going to use, is that I was reading someone else's letter. And I will be curious to see what comes of that letter. Is there a debate? It seems so ridiculous to say a debate. This is biology. Biology is not up for debate. But anyway, it obviously is. So there was that in this new redesigned TLS. Still has lots and lots of great stuff in it. Redesign or no, I was expecting the worst, and I did not get it. I have not got that so far. I was expecting this to be a lot more concerned with the plastic arts, and I was expecting the number of pieces to be smaller and for them to be lighter. And I haven't seen that so far. Maybe that's the kind of change that will take time to happen. But otherwise, the tribute was wonderful. And the mail was the coast of everything. Buy it. Or don't. What's it about? I don't know. When's it set? I don't know. What's it cost? I don't know. Google it. But 3 great pieces of nonfiction. That's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So a trickle of our summer Steve tribute is still coming in. That's oddly comforting. So I'll wrap this up for now, and I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.